What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Fiery Fridays. Today was game 3 of the NBA Finals out in Miami, the first game in Miami after them tying it to 1 apiece. Denver got the job done today. Triple doubles from both star players, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. One of the better games I've seen Jamal Murray play today. He was everywhere on the floor. Christian Brown or Braun had 15 points and 7 rebounds, I think. And they are up 2-1. Next game is in Miami. We didn't think Miami would get a game last game. We didn't think they'd get that one, but they ended up doing it. So surprising. Hopefully Miami can win it next game to make the series a bit more interesting. But Bailey, how you been?
Yeah, good. Was shocked that Miami got a home game on the Nuggets. I thought maybe today would be the day where they get the one game. I had it going, 5 games, 4-1 the Nuggets way. Thought maybe the next one too, but I was shocked that they lost at home, the Nuggets. But yeah, I suppose it just proves you never can out the Heat. They just continue to show up. And yeah, even though I think the Nuggets are going to win, I'm definitely rooting for the Heat to get it done.
Sure. We'll get into our first question of the day. The draft is coming up. I think it's in 15 days now. Very exciting draft, this one. Wembanyama obviously being the talk of the town. But the number 2 pick landed in Charlotte's hands. And Charlotte were a bit of an interesting roster last year. Obviously, they had a lot of problems with book night. They had the Miles Bridges problem. LaMelo was out for almost 60 games. They've got a very interesting team and a bit of an uncomfortable situation, if you ask me, but they have landed the 2nd pick, luckily. The first question today is, what should Charlotte do with the 2nd pick? Do they keep it? Do they look to trade it? What do you reckon?
I think quite simple. You just keep it, build around LaMelo with a young core. They've got that forward, Miller. I forgot his first name. But yeah, I think it's pretty simple for them. They're probably in the best position, other than the Spurs, going into the draft, where they can take a small forward who can score and pair him up with LaMelo Ball. Yeah, I thought they're in a great position just to hold the pick. No need to trade it. You're not trying to compete now. You're looking down the path.
Yeah, is Scoot on the cards for them?
Um, I was definitely on the cards. I'm sure they've looked at it deeply. Those scouts go real in depth with these kind of things. But I mean, the way that Portland's posting about him, it seems pretty set that I think Dame's gone. In my opinion, I know he was saying something about the Heat. I know it's all speculation, but Portland seem pretty interested. Charlotte hasn't really posted anything, but it just is logical sense to take someone who would pair up, I think, a lot more ideally being a forward than getting a 6 foot, or not a 6 foot, but a short point guard when you've got LaMelo, who's 6'7" and is more of that modern day bigger point guard style.
Yeah. I agree. I think they hold the pick. I don't think there's much rush into getting, a veteran or a star player in Charlotte. LaMelo's still young. He's only 21, turning 22. They've got a bit of an iffy contract on Terry Rozier, but they're not really paying anyone else on that roster. Obviously they're paying Gordon Hayward 30 plus million. But there's not really a need for a star in Charlotte. So I do think you take the pick. I think the pick is Brendan Miller, although a lot of people are disagreeing. They think the draft, you just take the best player on the board no matter what need your team has, which I slightly disagree with. I think, if you draft a player into a team need and they're in a good position, they can blossom into a better player. For example, Tatum, Josh Giddey, those sort of players. So Scoot might be the better player, but I don't think he's going to be as good as Brendan Miller can be in Charlotte. So I think you do take Brendan Miller. And if you're a frequent listener of the podcast, you know what we think of forwards. And if he can rise up to be a top 3 forward, top 3 pick as a forward, then it's definitely worth grabbing him. Defensive player as well, put up good stats in college. And some argue that he might be a number 1 pick if Wemby and Scoot aren't there. So yeah, I think you take the pick. I don't think there's any rush. I don't think you trade it. We'll get into some trades later. But yeah, like you said, Portland are in a sticky situation. Do they take Scoot and trade off Lillard, or do they trade the 3rd pick and get a star in? Which there's some fan trades later on in this episode that we'll talk about. But
Is it
I think they keep the pick and take Miller.
just quickly, like people always say, take the best player on the board, but is it like is everyone like certain that Scoot's a better player than Brendan Miller at the moment, or is it just like people going, I think he's better, I think someone else is better?
Well,
Because it's always that people think it's so easy just to go, oh, he's better than them, but like, is he? We don't know yet, really.
yeah, I think Brendan Miller has always been below Scoot on the mock
Okay,
drafts, but until
yeah,
recently,
right,
um, I don't know what's going on at Pro Day or
yeah,
the NBA Combine, but Brendan Miller has only just risen over Scoot as
okay,
of late. So
yeah,
people would probably say because of the raw athleticism and what Scoot did
yeah,
in the G League against pros compared to college, but I think
right,
yeah, they're
makes
different
sense.
positions. It's hard to judge, but we'll
Yeah,
see. We'll
okay,
see. I think we're both agreeing that they take Brendan Miller.
yeah.
Question number two, breaking news as of today, the Phoenix Suns are dropping Chris Paul and are waiving him. Bit of an interesting one, as they don't really get anything in return. I don't know why they wouldn't even swap him for a few second rounds or even a player like Tobias Harris or, anything of that kind of level. They can get something in return, especially when they're in that win now phase with Durant and Booker there and Aiton. Where is the best landing spot for the newly free agent Chris Paul?
I was shocked at this. I know it's weird. The Suns obviously have a game plan around this, like maybe looking to do something in the off season. But I'm pretty sure if you waive someone, you still got to pay him. Is that right? He's on a big
Yeah, they
contract.
something about waiving him. They spread his contract out over a few years, and I think they save. I read 26 million in cap space or something like that by
So is
waiving him.
that so? I guess yeah, they're not doing this without having a plan. What
Yeah,
you'd get for Chris Paul in his current state, it's probably not much, like you said, but I'm sure they did try. But it might have just been easier to get this done now, going with a new coach. Um, Clear headspace. I don't know, like it's tough to know if he was right for that team. I don't really think so. I mean, he only played one game against the Nuggets and they got pumped. So yeah, I suppose moving him on is probably not the worst decision. They better be having a game plan in mind though. You don't just drop Chris Paul for no reason without getting something in return. So I think the Suns could have a big move up their sleeve coming. They don't do that for no reason. Where he'd go is a good question. Like, he probably goes and signs on a minimum somewhere. Maybe the Lakers.
yeah,
That's probably just off the top of my head. Where I'm thinking, where else could he go? Maybe the Celtics, something like that. I don't know if he'd do that, but this they get a leadership point guard. I think actually that's a good spot for him, I reckon. Even Miami, but I'm thinking more the Celtics where when they go down the Celtics, they get a bit frantic. He's the kind of guy who, even if they have to bring him off the bench, can just slow it down and get into their plays. Would be really good at that. Whether they want to mess with their young core, I don't know. But I think if you get the chance to have Chris Paul in your roster at all, we saw what he did with the Thunder with just a bunch of young players. He's obviously got a high IQ. So yeah, somewhere like the Celtics, I think if he wants to win, here and now with LeBron, then he goes to Lakers. But they're probably the two teams off the top of my head.
yeah. I agree with your three picks on where he should land. Yeah, it's a little bit of a confusing move by the Suns, but presuming in the next couple of days we're going to see sort of a game plan as to why they did that. Maybe a trade happens, maybe they're moving something on draft night, but presuming they're looking to bring in something big with the cap space they have created, I don't think you'd give up Poole for nothing. So we'll see. But I think the three best landing spots, other than the ones you named, Miami, Lakers, and Boston, I think some out of the picture sort of teams that could be pretty cool to see would be back to the Clippers. They've obviously, whether they
Mm.
bring Westbrook back or not, I think he's their franchise's best player. So whether they bring back Kawhi and Paul George and don't trade those guys, and whether they bring back Westbrook, I think Chris Paul can slot in at the one for those guys if they think he can be a better fit than Westbrook, and then bring Bones off as your six man. I think that's a pretty cool fairy tale story. Spurs, they don't really have anything else to spend the money on, and if you can get a facilitating point guard with Wemby,
Mm.
bring Trey Jones off the bench, you still got Keldon, Vassell, and Sohan, and if you can make the play in, and even as a seventh seed dark horse in the West with that team, obviously that's a bit out of the picture, but you know what I mean. It would
I
be
don't
good to
mind that.
get some playoff experience under Wemby's belt in his very
Yeah.
first year. Could be Pop's last year coaching. I think Chris Paul in his last years get Wemby some some playoff wins and maybe make a push. Who knows? Keldon
Yeah.
Johnson put up 20 this year. Vassell put up 18 this year. Sohan's like a Draymond Green sort of player. So we don't know how good Wemby's going to be. And we saw what CP3 did with the Thunder. So those two would be my picks, I think, Thunder and the Clippers. Wizards need a point guard. The Bulls need a point guard. Um, yeah, I think Spurs and the Clippers would probably be my number one picks.
If you had to put a bet on where he's going, it's got to be LA. Surely he's pairing up.
Yeah, it would probably be LA. I mean, if
It's
they
just
if they can save, a lot of money rather than bringing in Kyrie Irving, then it might be worth bringing in Chris Paul. You get to keep Reeves, keep Rui. It's not a bad idea for LA, but definitely something they have to think about because Kyrie
mm,
Irving, I think, is much more of a production. He'll put in much more, give you much more positivity than Chris Paul at the moment, I think.
yeah.
But
I
we'll
mean, they
see.
both don't play that much, so
Yeah, that's right. We'll get into question number 3. The Boomers squad was announced, I think, early last week, and it's one of the most stacked squads we've ever had, if not the most stacked squad we've ever had. I'll read it out quickly for everyone listening. We've got Xavier Cooks, Dyson Daniels, Dellavedova, Exum, Sam Froling, Josh Giddey, Chris Goulding, Josh Green, Joe Ingles, Nick Kay, Jock Landau, Thon Maker, Will McDowell White, Paddy Mills, Keanu Pinder, Duop Reith, Matisse Thybul, and Jack White. Now, that's an 18-man squad. Obviously, there's a few players that have been snubbed slash missing, sort of like Aaron Baines, Mitch Creek, Tyrese Proctor. But it will be cut down to 12. Ben Simmons is also on the cards, but we'd never know with him. And he's obviously been given a deadline to give his answer whether he's playing or not. A few players have been announced to the US squad, such as Ant Edwards, Mikal Bridges, Jalen Brunson, etc. What are your thoughts on this team, and who would you start? Because the 12-man is going to be really hard to cut down.
yeah. I think you're definitely starting with Giddy and Paddy Mills in the guards. I think they've kind of, well, obviously Giddy's, performing the way he is. You got the young talent on the scene. I think he's almost locked his spot, and I don't think you can disrespect Paddy Mills with the way he's been playing over the last couple of years. Whatever he's doing now, he kind of turned into a different player when he plays for Australia, and he's going to give us that basic kind of scoring at the guard. And then I think you could actually start Josh Green. Played well, all season now. Bit of a longer kind of forward, can shoot, can play defense, can get on the rim, can rebound. Just a solid player, won't do too much around the others. And I think Xavier Cooks maybe he's earned him spot at the starting 4. I was thinking maybe Simmons, but I just don't like the Simmons Giddy. I don't know if they're too similar of a player to make it work. It could work really well, but I think if maybe you brought Simmons off as 6-man, he'd have a kind of crack at that second unit and might build a bit of confidence, etc. And then I think Jock Landau is 100% your starting center. So I'm not too invested in this kind of Australian stuff. I don't know too much about it, but that's just roughly off the top of my head what I'd be thinking. Yeah, with Simmons as your 6-man.
Yeah. I like it. I like that kind of take. I'm not sure if Ben Simmons is going to fit. He plays a lot of point guard. He likes a ball in his hands. And if he's paired with Paddy Mills and Giddy, it's going to be pretty hard to slot him into the starting lineup. I have him in my starting lineup. I know a lot of people don't want to see him suit up in the green and gold, but whether you like the hard truth or not, we do need him, especially if we want to have a good chance at that gold. And I want our best team forward, no matter who it is. Yes, he hasn't put on the green and gold in other circumstances, but as Australians, I think we should welcome him back with open arms whenever he's ready to come back. So he was an all-star two or 3 years ago. And I still think he's a 6'10" forward. That is one of the best defenders in the world. So we're gonna want him on the court, especially guarding if Kevin Durant plays, the Tatums, the Jimmy Butlers, those sort of players. We're gonna need a big player out there to guard them. So although I think this team is full of defenders, I would start Paddy Mills at the 1. And I'd start Giddy at the 2. I think and Jock Landau at the 5. I think they're the only 3 that are solidified.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to change my forwards from Green and Cooks. I'm going to change it to Joe Ingles at the 3. I think that creates a little bit more space on the floor. He's a shooter. And then late in the clock, he can always run the pick and roll. He's a pretty good ball handler. Good lob threat with Jock as well. At the 4, I'm going to put Ben Simmons. I think he's going to be a great defender. He can run the court. Gorge is going to have to kind of build the team around him being at the 4. But I think he's got a nice spot there. Off the bench, This is where it gets tough. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna start Dyson as the point guard off the bench.
Yeah.
Bit of an interesting one because he plays two at the Pelicans. He didn't really see much of the playmaking side, but what I saw at the G League, I think he's very capable of playing the one. Josh Green at the two. Fantastic season with the Mavericks. I think he was averaging over 15 plus at the end of the season. One of the only bright spots on the Mavericks towards the end of that season. So Josh Green's been really good, athletic, can run the floor and can defend. Matisse Thybulle at the three. That 1, 2, and 3 of Dyson, Green, and Thybulle is going to be really good on defense. And then Thybulle, obviously, bit of a rough season, bit of an inconsistent one. But then again, if you need someone to come on and defend, you know, you might even start him over Ingles. Hooks at the four. Obviously, the MVP of the NBL, playing on the Wizards now. Great rebounder, runs the floor well as well, can shoot. We're going to bring him off the bench on the four. And then I'm going to bring Nick Kay as the bench five. I really like what Nick Kay did with the Boomers team last time he played. Guarded Kevin Durant pretty well, and he also shoots the three. I think he's shooting the three at 45% over in the Japanese league right now. So I think this is a really good, balanced squad. Hopefully, Patty Mills is still playing at that level he was a few years ago. And I think we'll have a really good shot, especially if USA aren't bringing in their best players. I know I've heard Bobby Portis is going to be in, Austin Reeves is going to be in, Jaren Jackson, Ingram. So it's not like they're bringing in their big heavy hitters, these like certified all-stars. So I think if this team can click and Simmons can lock in and we get good chemistry in training camp, I think we'll have a really good shot at gold. So that would be my team for Boomers.
Yeah. All right, doing things a bit different. I'll ask you a few questions. Question 4, a few fan trades off Twitter. We're going to go through them and discuss, whether we do them or not. And I suppose just give our quick thoughts because there's a few to get through. All right, first one. Portland shouldn't trade the third pick unless they're getting a player that elevates them to Denver's level. Does a package of pick number 3, Simmons, Little, and Nurkic plus future first get them Embiid or Leonard? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think he's right with trading the third pick. I don't think you keep building around Lillard. It hasn't worked in the past. I don't think it will. They've had a few good teams. Does that package of the number 3, Anthony, Nazir Little, Nurkic, and picks get you Kawhi Leonard? I think certainly it does. I'm not sure about Embiid. Obviously, coming off an MVP season, they'll be pushing to get Harden, potentially Chris Paul, Philly. And I still think the Philadelphia 76ers is going to run it back with Nick Nurse. So does it get them Embiid? No. Does it get them Kawhi? Potentially. I'm not sure how the LA Clippers front office is feeling, but if they can land Scoot at 3, have Anthony at 2, you've got Paul George at the 3, maybe move Zubac for a few role players and get Nurkic at the 5. You've got Nazir Little off the bench. That's not a bad team. Especially a good team for Scoot to go to, and definitely a dark horse in the West, I think, if Paul George can stay healthy. So not a bad package, I think, if you're going to try and pursue Kawhi Leonard. Should they? I don't think so. But Kawhi and Dame, does that push you into automatic Denver level? I think so. I think they're two of the most feared players in the league. You get rid of pretty much your entire starting lineup. But if they can throw in Zubac back in that trade, I think it's a little bit lopsided, especially if they include the first. But if you can include Zubac back in that trade, that's not too bad for Portland. They've still got Cam Reddish, Shaden Sharp. Not a bad team. But what are your thoughts?
I don't. I mean, I think the Clippers have really bought into this win now kind of style. So I get that. That actually is a very good deal, I think, for Kawhi Leonard at the current stage. But I don't think they care. It's just like we're all in. We've already traded all the way our first round picks. We've got Paul George. We've got Kawhi. We're keeping Russ there. We're trying to build around. Like you said, maybe bringing in Chris Paul, whatever it is. I don't think they care about getting the third pick and looking down to build around Paul George. It's just like Steve Ballmer's one of the, biggest NBA owners in the league. And all he cares about is winning games and getting into the playoffs. And they probably didn't get the opportunity that they should have this year. I mean, like they didn't really get a fair crack at all. So I think no matter what, the trades wouldn't go through. They're not getting Embiid. It's just, what's the point? Unless he said, I want to go to Portland. or and same with Kawhi. But unless they both said that, I think both teams would just say like, thanks for the offer, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next one. The Wizards will trade up for the third and finally give up Beal. This is a stretch, but they also land Scoot at 3 because Charlotte won't choose Scoot.
This is one that I really like. I think it is time for the Beal Wizards era to end. I think we've got two young bigs, like I've said, potential all-stars if they all play to their best capabilities in Porzingis and Kuzma. And I think Scoot is the guy you go and get. I think you go give Portland Bradley Beal. Um, you get the two loyal guys that have been trying to win on their own and you pair them up. Maybe they try and go get another star, but I think Lillard, Beal, you got Shaden Sharp, Thibault, and then you got Grant and Nurkic. I think that's a really good team out in Portland and definitely can do some damage if they can figure out how to, figure out the Beal and Lillard situation there. But Lillard's been playing with CJ his whole life, sort of a similar play style to Beal did in this last year. Beal's been more of a facilitator. He shot his best shooting percentages in his career last year, I'm pretty sure. So I think the Wizards should try and go get Scoot. We need a point guard. We just drafted Kisper, who had a great first year. I think he averaged over 18 or 19 points in the last 15 games. We got Denny at the 3. Good position for Scoot to build and definitely pair up with Porzingis. So I would say yes for both teams on that one, but depending on where Portland wants to go, I don't know who says yes.
Yeah, I think it simply comes down to whether Portland are trying to run it again with Lillard. If obviously, in my opinion, they're not going down that path, I think it's all over. Then there's obviously no point in doing it. But if they go, you know what, you've got, I don't know how many more years you give him, then of course you take the straight Bradley Beal's, probably an ideal player to pair up with Lillard, who I think is just elevated CJ McCollum majorly. So yeah, I think if it's literally simple as are we giving Lillard another go or is it time? And I think then I'm sure there'd have to be more in the deal, contract wise, etc. Wizards probably get something else as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, both would do it if you're going, let's go, Lillard, let's go again. So that's not a bad one at all. I don't mind that. Next one, Orlando trade both lotto picks, Fultz and Jonathan Isaac for Damian Lillard.
This is a tough one. I've seen a lot of people think about the Paolo and Dame sort of pairing up, and Orlando has a lot to offer. The 6th and 11th pick to Portland is pretty big. You can draft guys like Cam Whitmore at the 6. Anthony Black will be at the 6 if Portland wants to take another guard. Fultz is coming off a pretty good year, probably his best so far, and we haven't seen anything of Jonathan Isaac, who obviously I think he was the 6th pick a while back. He played his first minutes in a long time this season. So this isn't a bad way for Portland to look if they can't get a trade-off for the 3rd pick and they end up taking Scoot. This wouldn't be a bad pick to get 6 and 11 Fultz and Isaac, in my opinion. Orlando have a lot of talent out there. They've still got Cole, they've got Suggs, they've got Paolo, they've got Franz Wagner, they've got Wendell Carter. Not sure how much money they've got in the cap space, but they could probably sign someone else. And if they can get Dame out there, not sure if they're going to do much damage, but not a bad spot to get Dame for the second half of his prime to pair up with number 1 pick Paolo's coming off a great rookie year and potentially going to be the next star in the league. So I don't mind this one either. Would it be the best spot for Dame? Not sure, but really good for Portland if they can keep that 3rd pick and get 6 and 11.
Yeah, I think this is extremely biased to
Magic.
Portland. No, I was going to say Portland. Yeah. Like if they get both lotto picks, Fultz and Jonathan Isaac to pair with the 3rd pick for Damian Lillard, who's, almost saying he doesn't want to be there, that is crazy value. I guarantee they wouldn't get that for him. Not that Dame's not, a superstar of the league. I just think you're giving up a lot of things, not for much benefit. Like, yeah, you're going to compete now. You're going to win the championship with that team. No, in my opinion, you're not winning with Dame and Paolo. But I also think it stunts a little bit of those younger guys' development, bringing him in too. And you're giving up, what is it, the 6th and the 11th?
Yeah.
6th, the 11th, Fultz, who's starting to find some form as a former number 1 pick. He's all-star level is not out of the picture for him in the next few years. Jonathan Isaac, we haven't even seen the potential of. He came back and played 2 games or something and got injured again. I know that maybe I feel like those 2 players are, high potential, haven't shown up yet, but they're
Yeah.
still young. And you're giving up all of that for Lillard, who I don't know how much time's left on his contract, but I guarantee you if they're not, getting past the first round in the playoffs, he's not re-signing with them in the next few years. He's gone anyway, and you've just given up, arguably, probably, other than having the first pick, the second best you could probably have here in getting the 16, 11. That's 2, young upcomers who a lot of people would have an opinion for. So I think if Portland saw this on the table, they'd absolutely start laughing at themselves and they'd go, let's go. But I can also see the other side where obviously Dame's a superstar talent. So yeah, but if I'm Portland, I'd be going, please, Orlando, send me this.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think Orlando's the winner of that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Last question. Pascal Siakam and the 13th pick for Anthony Simons and the 2023 round 1 pick number 3.
Yeah. I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen on draft night. I don't think Portland are going to want to keep that pick for some reason, and I just have a feeling they're gonna build around Dame again. And I think Siakam's the perfect player to do it with. Do I think they rise to Denver level, as people are saying? Maybe. I mean, Siakam's an all-star. I think he puts up about 24, 9, and 6 or something like that. They do keep the 13th pick. A lot of good players get drafted around that 11 to 14 range. And if they can take a Nick Smith off the bench or a Keontae George, I think that's a really effective way to use that 13th pick, or Grady Dick even. So Anthony Simons on the Raptors, and then you potentially get Scoot. You've still got Scotty Barnes, OG, and Jakob. Not a bad way for the Raptors to start their rebuild. And again, not a bad spot for Scoot to start his career. So I think this is going to happen. I like it for both teams. It's going to be a bit difficult to move Grant in Portland around Siakam. Do you play Siakam at the 3? I'm not too sure. I still think they're going to have to make a big kind of push in free agency, Portland, but not a bad move, I think. Anthony Simons obviously is a young upcoming guard and he's very good. So to get him and Scoot to start your future backcourt, I think it's really good for the Raptors, especially for the value of Siakam.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Once again, I think it comes down to whether Portland give Dame another chance. Not so much give him another chance, but ask him, if you want to do this one more time. The only little issue I have is there's only 1 year left on Pascal Siakam's contract. And is it worth giving up the 3rd pick and a young upcomer in Simons for potentially 1 year and then both Lillard and Siakam go?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Like, I know you get the 13th pick, but that's not the 3rd. And so yeah, that's the only little query I had on it. Say if there was 3 years left on Siakam's contract, you're probably a little bit more confident. But the fact that there's 1 year on them, they have to once again probably get through the first round and compete really deep into that second round for both of them to say, let's go again. And can they do that? Maybe they can, but it's a lot of risk when you could play it a lot safer. And I still think they're not going down that path of building around Lillard again. But if they decide to, then yeah, this is another one. I think along with that, what was the other one we touched on? The Beal one that Portland would look at. Probably more leaning towards this one, just makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, once again, you're giving up 2 young stars for someone who's only there for possibly a year, and then you're losing Dame as well, and you're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it's pretty tough, but there are some good trades, I think, in speculation.
Yeah. We'll get into the questions of the week. We'll start with yours.
Yeah, I'm going to read you out this team. So, in my opinion...
Do I need to write this down?
No, you won't. Okay. In my opinion, Dirk Nowitzki in the 2010/11 season is the greatest championship of all time, taking on LeBron, Wade, etc. Now, I'm going to read you out the 2 starting teams. And I know Nuggets have just beaten the Heat. They're up 2-1.
Mhm.
But
Presume Heat come back.
if the Heat come back, what's a greater championship? I'm going to read you out the starters for Dallas, and then the starters for the Heat, and what team sounds better.
Yeah.
And think about who they're going against and who they did go against. So it was Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Kidd, 37-year-old Jason Kidd,
Yeah. I know he's old.
Sean Marion, Jason Terry, and Tyson Chandler were their starters. Now the Heat, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, and Bam Adebayo. What team do you think had to be better? Like what's more impressive, I should say.
Yeah. A lot of people might sit here and say that Bam is better than anyone on that Mavericks team by quite a significant amount. But if I remember correctly, Tyson Chandler was the starting center for
Yeah.
USA.
Mm.
And I think he was making first teams in the NBA,
He might have made one or two.
but he was a high level center on that team. So they almost cancel each other out. Bam's obviously playing really well in the finals, but other than that, up to this point, other than the last 2 or 3 games, Bam has not really been performing. He's putting up 15s, 16s, but he's not being the all-star USA center, top 3 center in the league that people, put out him to be. So I think the Heat supporting cast, they're all undrafted. Not all of them, but most of them are undrafted. A lot of them second rounds. It's definitely a worse team, Miami. So it's a good question. Dirk's obviously going up against much harder competition, arguably, in LeBron James in the middle of his prime, and Dwayne Wade obviously being in his prime as well. So it's tough. I'd probably give it to Jimmy if he can pull this off, to be honest, just because of the road he's had to take, Bucks, the first seeded Bucks, who are former champs 2 years ago. Very hard first round matchup, dropped them off. The Knicks, who have in my opinion, much better team than Miami. You got to go do 2 in New York, which is probably the loudest stadium in the NBA. Drop them off 4-2. And then they've just beaten the heavy favorites in the Boston Celtics in 7 games. And now, if they can somehow beat Nikola Jokic, the 2-time MVP, and the Denver Nuggets, who are arguably the best basketball team in the league right now, then yeah, I'd probably give it to Jimmy Butler. But that's a good question. I think a lot of people would have Dirk.
I'll read you out the Heat starters as well. It was Mario Chalmers, Dwayne Wade, Joel Anthony, Chris Bosh, and LeBron.
Yeah.
Or it's obviously Jamal, KCP, Gordon, Jokic, and who else do they start? Oh, and MPJ.
Yeah.
I think the Heat are obviously a lot better than the Nuggets on paper. But you're saying the Mavericks still had a better team.
I'm going to say the Mavericks had a better team than Miami right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more impressive if the Heat do it, even though they're versing worse people.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I was saying the road to the finals is what
Was
makes this
tougher.
Heat team. Yeah. Bucks,
Okay.
Knicks, Celtics, and now Denver. It
Yeah.
is a very, very tough road. Almost the toughest anyone could have had, and they've gotten this far. So I'd probably give the slight hand to Jimmy.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. I think up until this stage, that performance by Dirk down 2-0, come back to win 4-2, just blows my mind against that team. And I think if Jimmy can do this, he'll take the reins as the toughest championship ever because it is ridiculous.
Yeah. For my question of the week, I want you to get up NBA point guards. Now, this is relating to what's currently going on. The NBA Finals. Jamal Murray is coming off a 30-point triple-double. Is absolutely balling in this postseason. And he's kind of an interesting player when you look at the point guards and where he ranks. So I kind of want you to
What
read
am I
out
looking up? Top point guards?
just point guards in the NBA. I want you to read out every NBA point guard that you think is better than Jamal Murray, and then we'll count and have him where you have him on your point guard list.
What are we counting Luka as?
A point guard.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll count Luka as a point guard.
Luka,
Yep. That's 1.
Shea,
That's 2.
Lillard,
That's 3.
Steph,
4.
Kyrie,
That's 5.
Trey Young.
6.
Mm, Probably right around this mark now. You're looking at maybe, I don't know if I'm missing anyone because it's kind of just ranked them off stats for the
Yeah.
season.
What about Ja Morant?
Yeah, he's the one I'm looking at now. I like Jamal Murray more than Ja Morant, I think. I think if you switch the roles, um, if you switch the roles, Murray is ridiculous at the moment. No, I'll stop it there.
Okay,
I
7th
think,
best point guard in the league.
yeah. And I
Yep.
think you could argue him maybe, on what he's done. You could maybe argue him over it. That wasn't in order, by the way, of
Yeah.
Shea there and whatever. But I think you could argue, people could argue, he's just as talented or close to those guys and Shea and Trey Young, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say
Um,
around the seventh.
yeah.
I think
I had a
there's
I had a poll up at the start of the playoffs, and I'm like, pick a point guard. On our YouTube channel, I was like, pick a point guard. Who's the worst player between Brunson, Jamal Murray, LaMelo Ball, and De'Aaron Fox? And I think 80% of the votes were LaMelo is the worst player there. So it was pretty interesting. But yeah,
well,
I was keen to see where you had Jamal Murray ranked in your point guard list.
yeah, seventh. I reckon that's probably pretty fair.
Yeah, I'd kind of think about Fox and Jar.
Yeah,
I'd have
yeah.
to have a kind of think about it, but yeah, I think maybe Jar gets a slight edge. But yeah, I like it. 7th spot.
His turnaround jumper Jamal Murray's
Yeah,
is insane.
yeah,
I've barely seen him miss him.
yeah,
Like it's just he looks extremely hard to guard at the moment. I think this could be a bit playoff bias towards me putting him that high. That's why I said you could probably throw in, like you said, De'Aaron Fox, Ja Morant. Um,
You say Curry?
yeah,
Yeah, I was
Curry.
gonna say. All right.
Um, so yeah, I think he's guaranteed top 10. I don't think anyone can argue that he's not a top 10. I'd
Yeah.
be happy to go at you if go against you if someone said he's not a top 10. I'd be up for that debate.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for joining us. We will be posting snippets as per usual on all our channels. Make sure you guys subscribe on whatever streaming platform you guys are listening on and our YouTube. Go follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And we appreciate you listening. We'll catch you next week.
Cheers.